So the jurisdiction of an internet transaction continues to be a bit murky. Two ships meet in the middle of the ocean, and one is flying a French flag and one is flying an English flag, but the land, the land that is closest to where they are in the sea is Spanish. What exactly is the rule that applies if that kind of thing happens? Law of the sea, we worked this stuff out over multiple centuries. The internet has all the same issues, but they're happening in microseconds rather than months. And we still don't have a general understanding of where an internet event happens. Seller's domain, buyer's domain, exchange's domain. What if you're a US citizen but you happen to be on vacation in Jamaica at the point where you do the thing? This question of what is the jurisdiction where the event happens and who's legally responsible for it, it's just inherently unresolved until the international law people get their game together. Ian Grigg did some really, really, really interesting work on this relative to the idea that you could establish all the transactions in a given jurisdiction using legal structures like trusts. But until that's figured out, the sort of public chains are leaving all the questions of jurisdiction to somebody else. The private permissioned chains, which have a single corporate entity operating them, at least that corporate entity has a nailed down jurisdiction where you kind of know where that happens. So, this kind of notion that you've got a network, the network is owned by a company, the company has an HQ, and you know whose doorbell to ring if something goes wrong. I think for a lot of entities, that's going to be the absolute minimum that they need to pin down jurisdictionality. And for the people that are doing this stuff on the open networks, I think the jurisdictional issues have to get figured out at a different level in the stack. Part of the reason that I'm slightly humming and hawing on this is, my own interest in this stuff is this concept of synthetic jurisdiction. And synthetic jurisdiction is a way of asserting the jurisdiction of a transaction without necessarily having to assert the jurisdiction of the network or the jurisdiction of the counterparties. And that kind of synthetic jurisdiction stuff is slippery to handle. You have to do quite a bit of infrastructure work before you can produce that kind of synthetic jurisdiction. But I wonder in the long run whether our hunch is going to be right and synthetic jurisdiction is actually the correct way to handle pretty much all of this.